Namaste. Welcome to Savitur Botanicals YouTube channel. I have a special gift today because I am currently in India with a group of amazing people and we are studying Jyotish, Vedic astrology. More on that in another video. But what we are doing is talking about, of course, essential oils. And we are in the heart of where I collect many of my oils. I have a factory, if you will, that is based out of Haridwar, which is about a 45-minute drive-ish from where I'm at. They're headquartered out of Mumbai, and they have factories set up all over India. In India, it is one of the most common places to grow the herbs that create our essential oils, from peppermint, eucalyptus, cashmere lavender, very different than lavender from Bulgaria or from France. As you know, sandalwood, jasmine, these are all traditional oils that have long time come from India. I do have growers that are in different parts of the world, but today we are going to focus specifically on the India oils and then even more specifically, how to use them in a class, how to use them in a public environment, what they mean to Jyotish, and some do's and don'ts of what does Somah use when she travels abroad for an extended period of time. And I brought kind of my samples with too. And I have lovely people in the backdrop who are going to ask questions. So please comment below. We'll respond to your questions, your feedback in the upcoming series. So for now, I'm going to turn it over to the audience right away and say, what do you want to know about an essential oil? What are some of your questions that you've had? And I'm going to start with Regina because she's closest to me operating the camera, and it's always good to take care of your camera people first.
Dear Somah, I would love to know what made you so excited about oils. How do you see your benefits? If you could share your story, how the oils helped you to heal something what you had in the past.
Of course, she's asking me this question because what everybody else doesn't know is that this is the woman who actually brought me to essential oils. So,
I mean, when you said no, I didn't mean that one, but I meant like when you had an accident and the doctor didn't allow you to come here, but you healed yourself.
Okay, so there was that too. So first of all, I was brought into essential oils when I was in India, and Regina, the woman who asked the question, I don't know how much you can hear because I have the microphone on me. She asked what brought me into the healing arts of essential oils. And I was here in 2011 going through an incredible heartbreak of life. I just felt that no matter what I did was wrong, no matter what I did created problem. I felt like I was in these walking time bombs, landmines, and Regina was studying Ayurveda, and I had never heard of Ayurveda, but I had been a sports nutrition major in school. And when she started speaking to me about herbs and oils and food, that lit me up. And then just before she left, she handed me a small bottle that was probably not much bigger than this. And it was filled with, it was a plastic-ish bottle that had a carrier oil in it. That's a Q word if anybody wants to ask about what that is later. Carrier oil, and it had a little bit of rose oil. She gave me that oil and immediately my heart softened. And for the next 30 days that I was here, every time that I was feeling a sense of intensity or drama or trauma to my heart, I would smell that oil and it instantly, physically took me to a space and my heart was, it's going to be all right. Things are going to be okay. So then fast forward to, I think the story she's referring to more specifically is I was invited to participate in a motorcycle ride, and I was a brand new rider. I had just taken a weekend Groupon sort of class and then had gone to go riding with a particular friend. And as he was showing me how to manipulate myself around the bike, I was getting kind of frustrated because I just wanted to ride. Well, my frustration got in my way, dropped the bike on my foot and did a spiral fracture on my foot. Had to keep my boot on, knew that when I got home that was kind of serving as a cast of sorts. Went to the doctor, and doctor number one said, you will have to have surgery. You can't go on this motorcycle trip. You have to have surgery. You have a spiral fracture. Here's what the x-ray looks like. And something in my belly went off and said, no way, I'm not doing that. I'm going on a motorcycle ride next month. So said, thank you very much. Went to another physician, just another like an urgent care. Said the exact same thing. You can't go on a motorcycle. You have to have surgery. Look at this is what's happening with your bone. You need surgery. And something went off in me again and said, nope, that's not my story. I'm going to be able to go on this ride. So went home and did medicine mantra, which is a very strong, powerful mantra. Again, more on that on my affirmative yoga channel. But for Savitur Botanicals, if you look at the mantras and the power of what a mantra can do, it started to stimulate my brain, my healing powers. I fell asleep that night, woke up the next morning and said, I want to call Colorado Orthopedics. Had never even heard of Colorado Orthopedics. This had come to me through the mantra. Drove to this clinic that happened to be less than 10 minutes from my home, a brand new clinic. Went to the doctor and said, here's what I'm going to do. In 1 month, I'm going to India. I'm going to go on a motorcycle trip and I'm going to heal myself. And I need a doctor to verify the healing. I need somebody to do an x-ray in 2 weeks and then again in 4 weeks, because my teacher in India heard about this and said he wants to have proof that I'm going to be safe to ride by the time that I get here. So he kind of looked at me and said, what are you going to do? And I said, it's really not important what I'm going to do. I just need you to verify in the backdrop and take the x-rays as is. Well, he, of course, tried to talk me into anti-inflammatories, painkillers. I wanted nothing to do with any of that because I tried to explain I'm doing this from the inside out work. I don't want any external healing at that point. Went home, and of course, as coincidence would have it, I got messaged by a local girl saying, hey, I've been trying to explore essential oils and acupuncture. Would you be willing to be my test case? And I want to use the two together. And I would trade you acupuncture for oils. And I said, great, let's start tomorrow. Let's go every other day for the next 3 weeks because I just fractured my foot and I need somebody to do some acupuncture on me. And I just started to see, doing these mantras, working with the oils, intuition was coming alive. Back to Regina's question, what enlivened my heart was starting to come to life. When I was in Ayurveda school, I was trying to memorize the herbs. I was trying to remember what was used for what. Once somebody brought essential oils into my realm, I could smell the oil immediately and tell you what it was for. I didn't have to memorize anything. I could tell immediately. I knew if it was cooling, calming, uplifting, grounding, if it's something I could put on an open wound. I just knew instantly. And it was invigorating to have that memory pop back. So I knew with this woman that I was going to be able to do a wonderful trade and that we were going to use the essential oils to heal this foot. So that ensued the next, every other day for the next, well, we'll start with 11 days. After 11 days, I was using Helichrysum, peppermint, lavender, and clove as my grounding oil. I used arnica initially to heal the inflammation. And then I was doing acupuncture every other day, and marma chikitsa, which is a form of therapy. Marma, you're working where the blood vessels and the nerve endings intersect. And I was doing that to myself twice a day because Ayurveda believes in self-healing, learning from a practitioner what you can do for yourself. So I got to be my own guinea pig, and I was on crutches, so that was starting to build my upper body strength and thinking, this is going to be great because handling a motorcycle is going to be a lot of work. After 11 days, I stood on one foot. I took a little photo of it. I sent it off to my teacher, said, I'm gonna be there in 3 weeks. I will definitely be there. And continued had my foot in a cast and was really using my meditation. So the oils were talking to me every day. They were telling me like gods and goddesses what foods to eat, what mantras to do. And I started to feel like each of these oils is sort of like a friend. Some friends are super loud and super, external and extroverted, and you bring them to a party and they're great at a party, but not so much in a library or when you're trying to study in a quiet place because they get you into trouble a lot. Then you have your nice quiet friend, and you have your nice quiet friend that you go to and you go on walks or you wake up next to in the morning when you want a nice peaceful, but not super fun to take to when you're going to this big party and everything they say is whispering and you're just like, okay, later, we'll get to you later. You want your friends who are kind of loud and precocious. So each of the oils have that same mentality, and that started to show up very prevalently during this 4-week journey. By the time 4 weeks came around, I went back, took an x-ray. The doctor could not believe, absolutely, he actually called the original hospital that I had the x-ray done to verify that that was the day indeed that I had broken my foot, because they said a spiral fracture cannot heal that quickly. You have to do certain things. And I knew that it was the Helichrysum, AKA immortelle. So Helichrysum is called immortelle because all it knows how to do is repair like cells. So you'll get Helichrysum oil if you have bruising, if you have acne issues, if you have wrinkles, if you're wanting to repair damaged skin, if you have a wound that you're healing, a scar that you're healing, you wouldn't put Helichrysum on an open wound, because the open wound, it will bleed more. And so it promotes more bleeding through. So that would be an oil you would save for once the scar has happened. If you have a bruise, it's amazing. It would literally stop a bruise on contact. So 4 weeks came along. I passed the test. He couldn't believe that that was all truly just done by herbs and oils and food. That food became a huge piece too. I was being instructed to really be heavily plant-based at that moment so that my body could efficiently use the calories differently. And I was instructed to bring in my goddess friends, have somebody come over and clean for me, have somebody come over and cook for me, because I had fractured my foot, so my ego was fractured. And I started really to hear about the intuitive measures that the oils were bringing me to. They were talking to me. They were telling me that somehow, some way, my heart had been fractured, and I'm afraid of where I'm stepping in life and the grounding underneath me. And so I was getting this incredible, deep, guided wisdom, all from Helichrysum, peppermint, lavender, and clove. Well, when I did a little more research, Helichrysum is the immortelle. It only knows how to replicate like cells. Peppermint's a driver. So if Helichrysum just sits still, it kind of penetrates, but it's not going to go down to the bone necessarily. The peppermint will drive it. Also, frankincense can be a driver, and also lavender can be a driver, but peppermint is a little bit more intense, as is clove. Now, what's interesting about the emotional side of peppermint and clove is that peppermint is a heart oil. It's called like a buoyant heart oil, and clove is an oil of boundaries. And Helichrysum is an oil of inner child. So there are these emotional connections to the oils that I was kind of putting them together going, wow, this is where my subconscious brain is, and this is what needs to be healing. If I can heal that, which I know I can do in 11 days, 21 days, if I stay focused on it, then my body doesn't have a choice but to follow suit. And that's exactly what happened. So then, of course, I went to the doctor the last day. He approved everything. And of course, he said to me, well, before you leave for India on this motorcycle trip, make sure you bring some anti-inflammatories, some painkillers. I think you should wear the boot cast. I think you should have your crutches. I think I should give you a handicap thing so you can get to the front of the line. And I looked at him and I said, do you not understand the thing that I'm doing here? There can be no part of my mind that can feel injured when I'm going off to India to go ride a motorcycle up over high Himalayan mountain passes. That was the oils. That was the courage. That was the Durga aspect of you are healed. It's all in your mind. Keep moving. And that's been my most powerful story as it relates to 28 days later, I was on a motorcycle. I rode for 3 weeks and healed a fractured bone with that blend. La, 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 la. Yes, you're welcome. Yeah. So a lot of information I intentionally packed into that answer so that we could stir up more questions. Miss Danielle, please.
What is a carrier oil?
Beautiful. A carrier oil is the oil that's going to allow your body to absorb the essential oil in what I would call like a slow release form. Oils are made up of multiple components. You have alcohols, esters, sesquiterpenes, terpenols, monoterpenols. These are all different components and structures that make up, like we're learning in Jyotish, all the different grahas put into such a kaleidoscope of order. It's impossible to replicate the same person in a chart. Well, you can't replicate the same type of an oil. So let's just take the carrier oil of coconut oil versus sesame oil. So coconut oil, by nature of Ayurveda, is cooling. Coconut oil tells you when to use it. Now, an MCT oil is not Ayurveda savvy. MCT oil means it's been fractionated, it's been altered, and why did they alter it? Because they want to keep it at liquid form at all time. Nature tells you when to use it. When it's at liquid form, you use it. When it's solid, then it's a different form. As soon as you get an MCT oil, they've had to put it into the laboratory, they've had to take out some of those components and re-put it into its own category. That's like bottled water. So every fractionated coconut oil will have a trademark on it. Anytime you're buying a pure product, jojoba, coconut, sesame, there should never be a trademark on that because that means it's been processed, it's been altered. You can't trademark water unless you add in minerals. So Know your carriers, know where they're sourcing. My favorite go-to would be jojoba oil and olive oil. They're tridoshic, they're neutral. Jojoba is actually known as a wax. There's 0 spoilage time. After 20 years is what they say. So anytime that an oil has a shelf life longer than 20 years, they say it's forever. Because what it will do is just harden and become a wax, and then you can soften it. Very tridoshic, great on babies. It's like our skin's natural sebum, so it's a wonderful thick oil. And I did, of course, bring carrier oil is what I use every single day as I travel. I'll put in neroli and frankincense are kind of my favorite go-tos, but a frankincense carterii, not a frankincense serrata. We'll get back into different types. But the carrier oil or the fluid like hydrosol, and we'll get to what a hydrosol is. Carrier oil, a hydrosol, these are all items that carry the essential oil so that you can put it on your face or put it on your skin and not have it be too intense, because the oils themselves are very, very potent. And as soon as you have an oil that's not been adulterated, you have to know how to use it from a chemistry standpoint, which is why so many of the companies came out and about and they've recreated it and they've made it safe. But as soon as somebody's quote unquote made it safe or put a copyright on it, there again, it's been adulterated. So you want the carrier oil to put onto your body, into your hair. If I just put lavender oil on my skin, neat by itself, nothing else in it, it would evaporate in less than a minute. It might soak in, it might not. Now, if I have a bug bite, I might do that neat. I might put a little lavender, a little tea tree oil, or if I all of a sudden hit my arm really hard, my eyeball really hard on the side of something like a glass something, I might take raw, pure Helichrysum and dab that on there. I wouldn't need necessarily the carrier. Now this is going to be long term and I have a deep bruise, then I want the carrier oil on there because it's going to take 5 hours for it to really melt into my body and it's going to keep it there. Carrier oils are best also with babies, with elderly, because then you can dilute the essential oils you're in far more. You have more control over it. And so if I were making this blend for somebody who is on a lot of heavy medications, it would be very different than if I'm making this blend for myself or my friend Regina, who loves to walk around like a smelling rose petal. It depends on what you want. And so you can go less or more. Does that answer your question about the carrier oil? And that's really important about the temperature of it. So when I'm in India and it's humid, coconut oil is my best friend. When I'm in Colorado and it's dry and it's arid and I'm over the age of 40, 45, well, I'm much older than that, 53 if y'all care. It's just saying, once you're over the age of 40, 45, your body starts to cool because you're in vata. So you rarely want to use coconut oil. Now, if you're in the thick heat and you're heavy kapha type, and vata is the last of your doshas to hit, even though you're in the vata stage, coconut oil might still be great for you, but it would not be ideal for the average person over a particular age and in a dry, arid environment. In a dry, arid environment.
So I have a little bit of time to 45. So what oil would you recommend?
So again, depends on where you're at. As long as you're in India right now, traveling, coconut oil is fantastic for you. It's not going to be drying. If you feel that there's any dryness to your skin, I wouldn't use coconut oil. Coconut oil by nature is a drying oil. It's moisturizing, but it's a drying, moisturizing oil. So people who have a lot of acne have used coconut oil because it can help with the antimicrobials, the acne on the skin. I would use olive oil. I would use jojoba oil. Almond oil and apricot oil are wonderful. I use apricot seed oil a lot in the summertime in Colorado. I've stopped using almond oil personally because I found that I had a soft allergy to the almonds. So putting it on my skin was not a benefit. So make sure that you have zero reactions to it. If you're making a public blend for a lot of people, or if you're teaching a group class on a lot of people, I would not use the almond oil because you never know if somebody has a nut allergy. But even though jojoba is jojoba nut, it doesn't come from the nut aspect, and you can use jojoba oil with a nut allergy. Cannot necessarily use coconut oil if you have a nut allergy. So again, know your nuts, know your oils. Yeah? I can go deeper on that, but I think we should kind of keep it.
Okay, so carrier
Yes.
oils, coconut, olive oil, jojoba. So then as far as you mentioned coconut's cooling?
Yes. Sesame oil is heating. So if you've got somebody who's older, you live in an arid environment, they've got cricky, dry bones, somebody who's very, very vata, they're going to walk in your door and you're going to be like, oh, they are going to be wonderful with sesame oil. Make sure it's not toasted sesame oil or they're going to smell like a Chinese restaurant. Yeah. Not toasted, just plain sesame oil. And it's very soothing and very warming. And we make a lot of blends with that in Ayurveda. And we actually make a maceration of virgin plant-based oils. Do you want to talk about that? Danielle's eyes just kind of popped open. Sure. So take arnica or calendula. You're really just taking the plant, putting it into your carrier of choice, and my carrier of choice every time is olive oil. Every time. Never coconut oil. Any CBD products, any plant maceration oils, I always look for olive. If they're doing an MCT coconut oil, the only reason they're doing it is because they're trying to save money. 100%. I'm looking at the camera. 100%. There's no other reason. Because you can extend the life of coconut oil, and it's generally about 18 months, but you can get almost up to 2 years out of coconut oil if you pull out the deodorizers in it. So it changes the scent slightly, it changes the liquidity, but then it preserves the length of time. Again, in Ayurveda, we don't alter anything. We use something different if you want something different. And I'm just getting started.
Can you just
Yes, please.
again the Helichrysum? You said it was good for bruising, wrinkles, and what else again?
It's an anti-inflammatory. What it does is it copycats healthy cells, but it doesn't have a driver. So generally, Helichrysum is never used by itself. Once in a blue moon, my son was cup stacking. He was literally kneeling at the side of a glass table doing something, and he reached down really quickly to grab a cup and bonked the side of his eyebrow. I thought he was going to split his eyebrow open, but he didn't. And immediately I watched a bruise start to form. I grabbed some Helichrysum. I put it right on top of his eyebrow. I watched like time lapse in the matter of 3 minutes. It went black, green, soft blue, yellow, and then it was gone. And it was like it bruised and it went through its whole process. And then he got mad at me because he wanted his first black eye. Whatever. So it's just, if I only had one oil for healing, Helichrysum would be it. It is universal. In every medicinal cabinet, you should have it. And it's a very expensive oil. So generally the price of the oil is based on how challenging it is to harvest, whether or not you can harvest it at one snapshot of time, or if it's available at all times. The reason why a rose oil or jasmine oil might be cheaper is because what they've done is they've gone, again, into a factory, they've created a hybrid seed, they can still call it jasmine, but they can get it to bloom anytime they want. And then they can charge differently for it. But it's not the same as a natural jasmine that only blooms at a certain time of year, certain environment. That's the only jasmine that I personally source. So it's a Helichrysum much the same way. It grows only in particular environments and only in particular extreme pressures, and then it has to be distilled a certain way. And if you try to cheapen it, then you lose the quality of it. But that's what's done majority in the market. And there are a lot of companies where if you do a little digging, you'll find, oh, a lot of people have had a problem with Helichrysum in this company. Oh, a lot of people have had a problem with lavender oil in this company. And I can tell you what the research is as to why they're having that problem, but that's for each person to figure out. But again, like Jyotish, some people don't believe in astrology, not because astrology isn't working, but because some people dilute the principles.
Okay, can we get into how we can use these oils for our chakras, and also connecting to Jyotish and the planets, the signs of the planets?
Beautiful. Getting into Jyotish and the science of the planets, I'm really working at because I'm trying to stay in the realm of being a student right now. I've been asked to create Jyotish blends, and I'm looking forward to that. So that will be another video. We'll get into that. And we'll talk about that, I think, a little bit, because this is kind of a quote-unquote dress rehearsal for another talk that I'm going to be doing. I would like to get into that, and I would love to have feedback from all of you as I'm creating that, because I think that would be super helpful to get more brains involved. The first part of your question, the chakras. So when you're looking at your chakras, which ones that you're trying to activate, which ones you're trying to calm down, which ones seem to be talking to you more, that's where I go to my travel oils. So I use them literally every single day in what I do. When I get out of the shower, the first thing that I do is I have Somah's Deo, which means a deodorant or a deo essence. And I use that blend based on chemical studies of what the body needs, the pH balance, things like that, how the lymph moves in the system. My sister and my grandmother had breast cancer, so it was really important to me to understand what are we sticking into our armpits on a daily basis and what's that causing to the hormones, the pheromones, all of that long term, and how does that make us respond. So I feel that part of my process of what I'm putting onto my body is where the chakra balancing comes in, because I get the opportunity to remake those blends every time the bottle runs out. And if I have different bottles, they're going to kind of run out at different times, similar to in Ayurveda. No product should be on your shelf in the same form for more than 3 to 4 months, more than one season, because you're in a new season, you're in a new environment, you've evolved, you've shifted. And so to balance your chakras, you're going to have an awareness of, I want something more earthy. I want something more uplifting. I do have a document on my website, and I will release that in this video at the bottom. It's a PDF that goes through all of the different chakras and oils that are known for them. And then what I would have you do is make some of your own blends. So you can take a deo essence that I make and maybe doctor it up a particular manner. Maybe you want more geranium in it. Maybe you want more lavender in it. Maybe you want a little more tea tree in it. And so you would take a basic blend that I have and you literally put it into your fingertips. You don't roll it on. I do have roll-ons, but even if you roll it on, you rub it into the armpit when the armpit is dry, because when the armpit sweats, the pores open up, it sucks in the oil, and then you are a walking human diffuser and you've stimulated your lymph. Now, in my basic blend, it's a lavender, tea tree, thyme. In an earthy scent, I put vetiver. In the floral scent, I put geranium and ylang ylang. Now, I've made a new blend that was bajrang, and that had Palo Santo in it, cypress, laurel. So these were all different oils that balance different levels of the body chakra-wise. And so people could access, what do I need more of right now? In the summertime, I would always use my floral, and in the wintertime, I would take a little bit of the earth and throw it into my floral, because I was looking for that grounding aspect. We eat warmer foods. What are we balancing? The earth element of the body. So then the next piece of that chakra system would be your body oil, what you're putting onto your skin, your personal abhyanga. And I've just been in a mood of frankincense and neroli lately. So I know I'm looking for an earth element, but I'm also working with the crown chakra. So the frankincense oil would be on one of the root as well as a third eye, and the neroli is definitely third eye opening upper body. You can tell what level of chakra the oil is going to affect by how it's distilled, like what part of the plant is distilled. So if you have oil where you're distilling the seeds or the roots, that's going to be much deeper. It's going to be more of a low first, second chakra. The seeds, definitely second chakra. A root oil like vetiver root, angelica root, these would be oils that would for sure be first chakra. The sap of frankincense, so how frankincense is distilled is you actually scar the tree, ooze comes out, hardened crystal forms, you peel that off, and then you distill that. So that's literally the inside out. That's why it's a earth element oil. If you look at, now go the extreme opposite, citrus oil, they all come from the peel. So that's cold pressed. So that's going to be your crown, that's going to be higher in the body. It's on the external. Now let's get into like a flower oil that's distilled, say a juniper berry or even lavender. That's going to be more in the middle chakra section of the body because it's the middle of the plant. So it depends on what part of the plant's process. Is it the root? Is it the seed? Is it the trunk? Is it the leaf? Is it the twig? Is it the flower? Is it now the fruit of the flower? So the further you go out, the lighter it is, the higher you're coming up on the body chakra-wise. The lower it is, the more you're coming into the plant, down into the earth, the lower it is. So Ayurveda is all about just using intuition and common sense to, oh, where's that growing? Now let me smell it. Did that lift me up? Did that ground me? And so if you don't have a lot of essential oil knowledge, with some meditative qualities, you can kind of figure it out based on how it smells, and it will fire off in your body. And then generally, again, like good friends, I generally don't hang out with just one person at a time. You do, but yet when you kind of get together, you'll have 2 to 4. And so that's kind of like a blend. Now you get more than 6 or 8, there's too much noise, there's too much confusion, too many people talking at the same time. The only time that happens, again, is in a particular style of a company that's really more interested in the marketing aspects of it. What they'll do is have up to 10 different types, but they're taking the different components of it, creating a hybrid blend of it, putting it together, putting a trademark on it, and telling you can't find it anywhere else in nature. Which is true, but it's not the way that you want to be an individual. I'm making a person. Well, we're kind of doing that right now in science, in humanity, and it's not, in my opinion, the greatest use of our intellect. So chakras, I'll give you all a document that shows you, kind of leads you into that. But there's, of course, so many oils that I couldn't possibly list all of them. And many of them can be used for multiple chakras, depending upon what you're doing. But definitely use oils when you're working with your own chakra system or when you have somebody who's coming to you and they're not into all the woo-woo chakra, but you see where they have injuries or issues. Well, it's the same. If they're having stuttering issues or speaking and they keep losing their voice or they have a lot of migraines, I would definitely give them oils for the fifth, sixth, seventh chakras. Yep, from the throat up. Did that answer your question? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes. All right, Lydia. Sophie, you raised your hand. Sophie.
Can you speak a bit more about the migraines?
Migraines, yes. So the same pain relief oil that I used for my foot, I have had wonderful success with a migraine. Now we understand that a migraine is going to come back to Ayurveda. The migraine is going to come back to what are you eating, what are you doing, where are you, who are you with, what's going on in your world, what's your stress level, what's your food allergy has been huge for me, and understanding that you might be eating really healthy. I mean, I found out, I did a 750 food allergy panel test and I was allergic to rice, black pepper, cashews, corn, peas. I mean, things that were really healthy for me. And that could have given me a migraine. That could have given me some huge issues. So really make sure you know, not just muscle test, because I think muscle testing is fantastic, but do a blood test where they can say from 0 to 4, what your body's appreciation is of that particular food item. And that's the root, in my opinion, is the gut for the migraine. So now let's say we've got the gut going, we're starting to heal it, but we still have residual migraine stress coming on. Or we're traveling, we haven't figured it out yet, we just got a trigger. The reason why the Helichrysum is going to work is because that's going to act as the initial anti-inflammatory. And remember, the emotional connection to Helichrysum is inner childhood. So anytime we have pain, we have some level of childhood drama, something subconscious that's still coming forward. And so Helichrysum would be a fantastic oil. And then the peppermint. If you put peppermint on your fingertips and you give yourself a scalp massage, your head will guaranteed feel better for at least 10 minutes. Now you want more than that, but I'm just saying immediately you'll have a relief. Why? Do the same thing with clove. Do the same thing with cinnamon, because what it's doing, even though cinnamon's heating and clove is heating, I mean, I'm most recommending peppermint, but it's called a rubefacient. And when you have a rubefacient oil, it immediately brings tingling to the sensation, and your brain stops thinking about the pain, and then it goes, oh wow, what's that sensation? Ooh, my skin's burning. Oh, that's hot, cold. Oh, that's kind of and it starts to have this conversation about the feeling, and you forget about the migraine. And that's really all that it is. So if you're taking migraine medication, and that's just what you need to do, you could use the peppermint oil or some other mix of it to initially get rid of the pain, and then wait for that medication to set in. If you can avoid taking medication and start to figure out what the triggers are, obviously that's the goal of an Ayurvedic student, somebody who's trying to learn. But definitely Helichrysum. Helichrysum and peppermint I would use like 3 to 1 sort of thing, or 4 to 1. So 4 parts, 3 parts peppermint, 1 part Helichrysum. And you can use that for a first aid blend, you can use that for a headache, you can use that for inflammation. Because what's a migraine? Inflammation. It's blood vessels being restricted. So what we're trying to do is do a vasodilator and allow the oils to, or the membranes to shrink down a little bit.
For the headache situation, you said 3 parts Helichrysum, 1 part peppermint. Would you put...
Reverse that.
Reverse it?
Yeah, 3 parts peppermint, 1 part Helichrysum.
Okay, would you use a carrier oil as well so that you go deeper?
Both and yes, and depends. So if you have something that is acute at that moment, I might use it neat. That's what I did on my foot every day, neat. Now, if I have a kid who's working out at the gym on a regular basis, or you're going to give somebody regular foot rubs, then I would, anytime you can put it into a carrier oil, put it into a carrier oil, because less is more. Less is more. It takes 2,500 rosebud heads to make a bottle of rose oil. That's 1 teaspoon. 2,500 rosebud heads to just make a teaspoon of oil. So there's a lot of power packed into each drop, and especially in the West, we always feel like more is more, and really less is more. Often you'll get more bang for your buck and it will last longer. So I would put it in a carrier oil. If you were here doing physical journeys every single day and you just started to get achy a little bit and just you wanted to keep your muscles supple, I would take that Relieve and Regenerate blend that I talked about with the peppermint, helichrysum, lavender, and clove, and I would put it at like a 1 to a 3% dilution rate, depending upon your own desire of scent. So what does that mean? That means if I'm going to do 1 ounce bottle, I would have 6 to 8 drops in it. So if I'm going to have a 4 ounce bottle, multiply that by 4. Again, and then make it at your own ratio. And put it on. If you're in a lot of pain, 3% is fantastic. I've done 10% for perfume blends or something really, arthritis, it's really fired up sort of thing. But I try to keep it at more of a 1 or 2% dilution if it's somebody going to use it every single day. When I'm making a body blend for myself, it's even less than 1%. I just want something that's more oil-based for my dry skin and then has a soft little scent to it.
Coming back to the migraine, I resonate with the fact that the belly, the gut system really triggers the migraines.
Yes.
Could you rub something on the belly?
Yeah, I have a digestive blend that I make. That's really wonderful for that. And it has different oils in there that are specific, anise. Some of these more licorice smelling oils can be wonderful as a digestive. And you would put that definitely into a carrier oil and definitely rub that on the body, definitely in a clockwise manner over the belly to work with the natural digestive flow. And you could do that after every single meal. You could do that when they don't feel good. Again, while you're trying to figure out the food allergies for sure.
With the carrier oils, is there one for every season, or how do you select,
Yep.
which one you're going to use for the season?
So somewhat dependent upon your dosha type and what level. My skin dries out much faster than I'm looking at Regina in front of me or Sydney in front of me. I can just tell you by looking. It's like walking into a room. Oh, she's going to dry out faster than they are. So I could use a cooling oil, a coconut oil, especially if these two women were going to be traveling throughout India. I'm going to go back to Colorado. I would switch what I was using. So what season, where are you living, and what's your dosha type? If you don't want to overcomplicate it, olive oil and jojoba oil are great. Apricot oil, pretty much always great. If it's really, really cold temperatures, I don't necessarily go with apricot oil. I feel like that's more of a summer, springtime oil. So once your temperatures are up over 55 degrees consistently, then I jump into apricot oil. Coconut oil is generally 72 degrees is approximately when it melts. So again, that doesn't mean you can't use it for a balm, and it's a wonderful bedroom oil, and you can throw some fun, yummy flavors in there. And I used to do couples foot rubs and scalp massages, and then they would all make a fun coconut oil that they would take home and use in the bedroom. And coconut oil is fantastic. It tastes good. It's edible. You can put in orange and lime and make it really yummy too. And that's another whole conversation.
So I'm allergic to raw apricots and almonds.
Okay.
But when it's changed into an oil or it's heated in some way, it's fine. What are your thoughts on that?
So it shouldn't be heated, and if it is, then that's why you can use it. A cold pressed oil would still give you the reaction, and I wouldn't advise you using it. Because a true cold pressed carrier oil, if you have an allergy to that, like if you have an allergy to olives, generally, like I love using olive oil and I can cook with olive oil, But there are certain olives that that I get sick with, but that's generally black olives that I have more of an issue with. Green olives I tend to be more fine with. So knowing your own allergy, and I would patch test your arm, because if you put like a 25 quarter size amount, or whatever a coin in your country is, and patch test it, see if it gets red, if it gets height, how you feel. Go-to, great if you can, if you have the opportunity, would be jojoba oil. People call it jojoba, but it's jojoba. It's like chakras or chakras.
Can you eat any oil?
Yes, you can. So you can have almond oil, and almond oil is used in Ayurveda, taking a teaspoon of almond oil. And I did that for a long time after I'd had a parasite in my belly. And and my Ayurvedic doctor could see that I was literally drying from the inside out. And anytime, back to Jyotish, if you're in a Saturn return or a Sati Sati, your body is very prone to drying out. So a teaspoon of olive oil or almond oil would be very grounding and very nurturing. Thank you. We are back. So we have a couple of different questions.
Yeah.
Oceana, please.
Samaji, lots of my students, including myself, have issues with grounding.
Mm-hmm.
So I would love you to share your knowledge about which oils we can use for grounding the energy.
Sure. So back to what we talked about with the chakras, the closer that the oil is to the earth, the more that's a clue as to that it's going to be more of a grounding oil. My favorite top go-tos would be patchouli, vetiver, myrrh, frankincense carterii, very different than frankincense serrata, clary sage. So frankincense serrata is the #1 oil used in Ayurveda to calm the overactive mind. And that's different than calming the nervous system. The overactive mind starts to be more scattered. The nervous system is a little closer to home, which is what Oceana's talking about. I discovered the differences in oils and in Ayurveda when my dad had been diagnosed with Parkinson's. And so I was trying to figure out what oils would be best. And I knew that in Ayurveda, they talked about diffusing serrata, the serrata oil. And at that time, I was working with a company, and they didn't offer that. And so I just kind of used what they had, didn't know the difference, and then found later there was no serrata type, even within the oil that I was using. So know the species, know the components of the species, know how it was harvested, because that has an effect on how grounding it's going to be. Clary sage is a great oil, but it can be very, very, very deep and rooty and earthy smelling. So I would put it with a lavender oil, or I would put it with a jasmine oil. But if you have too much lavender and jasmine, that's going to come back up into the head again. So patchouli oil, fantastic oil for earthing. But again, a lot of people don't like it. It's too earthy smelling. It reminds them of a college dorm room. You get all sorts of funny connotations with that. Pair it with orange oil and grapefruit oil, and it is divine. And I actually made a blend called Hanuman G. And it was made for Yoshi, who ran the Hanuman Festival out of Boulder. And he asked me to make a blend specifically for him. And he now uses that as his daily go-to or whatever. But very, very grounding. Patchouli reminds you of your earth's dharma, and so that can be depressing to people. And then orange and grapefruit remind you that anything is possible. So you blend the two together, and all of a sudden it takes your dharmic path and makes it a little bit more joyous, and as it relates to that. How I would use it with your students and with yourself: in the first 2 weeks of our Ayurveda school, our homework, our assignment was every day we had to give ourselves a foot rub. And so you started out by making a super small bottle, more like ½ ounce, 15 milliliters, and you just put a small amount into your feet, and you would give yourself a foot rub, and then you'd go to the other foot, and we were learning about the different marma points. And then all of a sudden, you're thinking you're doing this assignment, but what's happening is that you're grounding the hell out of yourself. You're really just... It's like doing pranayama, but different, because you're touching the organs in your feet. They're actually the gallbladder, the digestive tissue, the stomach, because that's what reflexology is. You're working with the organs. So then if you were to take your hands after giving yourself a 10-minute foot rub with all these decadent oils, carrier oil for sure, with the essential oils in there, Now you do breath work because it's all over your hands. And you do Nadi Shodhana or Anulom Vilom or even just Agnisar or Amrita breath, and you're just breathing it in. Within 15 minutes, you're totally transported into a different plane. And I think you felt that a little bit when you first bought the oils and you were sending me some fun messages and like, oh wow, I've gone to a whole new dimension. Just having them in your room makes a huge difference. One of the tools that I bring with me when I travel is I travel with my own salt scrub. And this started when I was in my Ayurvedic intensive. Every night they would come to our room and they would literally, you'd put out your hand, they'd come to the door and they'd sprinkle salt into your hand. And then they would sprinkle some essential oils at that moment. And then you would literally go into the bathroom at that moment and start doing your salt scrub. And you do it on your dry skin, turn on the shower, and then you rinse it off. Well, the oils in the salt going onto the dry skin and then the shower hitting it, remember, oil and water don't match. So it stimulates the pores to open. Then the body draws in the oils and you're actually absorbing it because it's the oil's way of running away from the water. So it embeds itself into your skin, sort of like when I was talking about the DO essence. So the sweatier you get or the more the water comes onto you, you can salt scrub yourself. So start salt scrub your legs, salt scrub your body. Such a grounding therapeutic benefit to that. And again, it depends on what you put in there. I would put a myrrh oil, lavender oil, maybe a clary sage and jasmine. I don't remember what I did with this one.
What kind of salt are you using?
I use pink Himalayan salt, but you could use a Celtic sea salt. You could, whatever you're drawn to, you could use a black salt. There again, the darker the color, the more it's going to physiologically ground you. The lighter the color, the white, the pink, then it would be more of a Shri. So back to Sydney's question about the chakras. I could make more of a Shri salt scrub with a pink salt and use a jasmine and a softer element of myrrh, which is more of a motherly, tender female, chakra oil out of the earthy ones.
How do you make it?
So this particular salt scrub, I poured salt in like 3/4 of the way, and then I poured in just enough carrier oil to give me a little liquid, and then I put probably 3 to 4%. I made it pretty strong. I'll go ahead and pass that around.
What's 3-4%? Like 8 drops?
So 1% in one, this is a 2-ounce bottle. No, this is a 1-ounce bottle. So I probably have less than 10 drops in here. 1% would have been 6 drops. I'll just kind of go until it feels right at that moment. But again, even though I have access to all these oils, I don't want to waste it. I just feel a sense of compassion for every single drop. But I'll pass that around. So if you wish to smell it, you can.
You were saying earlier that everyone's going to be, all these scents are going to be different for everybody.
Yes.
Right? In terms of grounding.
Yes.
So can we just talk a little bit, maybe 1 or 2 oils per dosha?
Yes. So a vata oil that is going to be grounding would be patchouli, would be vetiver, would be a frankincense carterii, clary sage. That would really ground vata. Now, think of the different elements like a cauldron. So you've got the cauldron, and that's your kapha. If the kapha is too thick, and I'm building a fire on the inside, it's going to go out. If there's too much fire, I'm going to burn my cauldron. If I have too much air, I'm going to blow out my fire. So we're wanting to balance the fire, the air, and the cauldron all together. So that's kind of the same way when we're looking at the oils. You're going to feel differently based on your status. So I would take a soft oil like a grounding oil like patchouli or vetiver and maybe put it with a cypress oil or a grapefruit oil and give that a little soft lift. What you're going to smell, one of my favorite ways to smell an oil is not necessarily in the bottle, but in the cap. And you smell the cap and you can really get the overall sense of what it is. Same thing, you take off the cap, smell the cap and see how strong that is. Now smell the bottle. You almost get more flavor from the cap sometimes. Not necessarily with the salt scrub, but maybe.
Actually, that's true.
Yeah. So you need to know what's right for you because in Ayurveda, what grounds one person doesn't necessarily ground another person. But the basic rule of thumb is the lower that it comes from distillation purposes, the more grounding it's going to be. So the different chakras. So now we've got into Pitta. If we're trying to, well, let's go back to Vata for a second. That was if we're trying to calm Vata. What if we were trying to increase Vata? Then I would use peppermint oil and lime oil and spearmint oil and wintergreen oil and all these oils that would go right immediately up into my head and allow me to be a little bit more uplifting. And maybe I would take 2 drops of peppermint and 5 drops of orange, or 3 drops of lime and 8 drops of bergamot. And immediately that's going to uplift my Vata. If I'm feeling lethargic, if I'm feeling too kaphic, if I'm feeling too, I don't want to talk about kapha like it's in a negative manner. If my kapha is imbalanced and I'm feeling thick and lazy, then I'm going to want to do something to increase my Vata. If my Vata is imbalanced and I'm feeling too scattered, then I'm going to want to increase my kapha a little bit. If my Pitta is fired up, there again, Pitta, stimulating Pitta oils are going to be orange, are going to be something spicy, clove, cinnamon. These are going to stimulate the Pitta just like food. So go back to food. What foods stimulate your Vata? What foods stimulate your kapha? And you can kind of find a similarity with the oil family. Something citrusy. You smell an orange and immediately there's a sensation of uplifting. You smell a cup of coffee and there's a sense of almost grounding, or you just feel a sense of okay, I can get on with my morning. And it can depend on the person's mental connection to that item. Did that answer your question? Yes? And did that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm just a little confused about like if you're like angry or something.
Okay.
Very fiery.
Yep.
You need some sort of like.
Then that would be cool. Spearmint would be awesome for that.
Okay.
Spearmint is great for nausea. Spearmint is great for feeling a sensation of imbalance. So if I feel a sense of anger or frustration, I would want to uplift bergamot, spearmint, orange, lime, these peppermint, wintergreen. These are oils that immediately you smell them and you just smile. Like it's like somebody making a joke. All of a sudden, you're somebody coming in going, "I love you." You're really angry. You're like, "Oh my God, I can't even be mad now." The oils can do the same thing. Give me another emotion. Sadness or confusion.
Lethargy. How about lethargy?
Lethargy. Rosemary. They used to say rosemary for luck. What does rosemary do? It activates the brain. It helps with memory, focus. Yep. Oceana bought some. Back in the day, they used to take sprigs of rosemary and make a wreath out of it, put it on your head while you studied. Why? Because it would help focus. It would help ground. But too much rosemary too. You could get high on it. Now let's talk about rosemary as it relates to the rest of the world. If you just go by rosemary officinalis, that's a fancy way of saying we're not going to really tell you what's in it. Because the chemotype of rosemary at altitude is senile and at sea level is verbenin. Same species, but different chemotype. Because at altitude, it's very camphorous. You would use that externally. You would use that on achy muscles. You would use that, again, externally. The verbenin that's grown more at sea level has a little softer scent to it, a little grassier. You would put that in a nasiya blend. You would put that in a neti pot blend. You would put that into a salad dressing with lemon oil and olive oil. But I wouldn't do the other one. So the reason why a company will give you just rosemary officinalis is because they want to take the thinking out for you. They want to make a one-size-fits-all. And I stay very far away from that because you're not getting the chemotyping benefits of what you want from nature growing it the way that they grow it. But you wouldn't want to use a verbenin externally or a senile internally. But you have to know that. Basils, wonderful, wonderful oil. Holy basil and Indian basil. Indian basil, by surprise, is actually the one that you would use on salad dressings. Versus tulsi or holy basil, generally as an essential oil, you don't use it internally. So one might not know that. They think, oh, basil. It's like, oh, I could use that. I love holy basil or tulsi for external massage. Really invigorating, wonderful to open up the lungs. If you're in an environment where, especially if you're in India, during the wintertime, everybody gets very thick, heavy coughs, a lot of kapha, because the air is very wet and moisturizing. And so you'll get more joint issues, you get the kapha tendencies. And putting a carrier oil with holy basil and in a massage blend opens up the lungs. It's a vasodilator. It's a great opener without it being pepperminty, because sometimes peppermint can be too vata increasing.
Can we discuss, for someone like me that's kind of going through a not nervous, but like a central nervous system issue, what oils would you suggest?
Clary sage is always a go-to for me with women anytime you're going through a shift, whether it's hormonal, whether it's locational. Clary sage is the clarity of the sage. I mean, that's just what it stands for me. It doesn't really mean that, but when I think of that, I think of the clarity of the sage. But it's so earthy, and you really have to get a high quality clary sage. I get mine from France. That's not an oil that I get from India. They have an India clary sage, but I'm not a big fan of how it smells. I'm not a big fan of how they grow it here. And so again, I will only get an oil from where I deem it to be the best of the best of the best in the world, the most what you can have access to. That would be a great oil. Doing a foot rub every single morning would be fantastic. And you could do that easily with myrrh oil, orange oil. Lavender is a great go-to because lavender is a throat chakra oil. And so people will say lavender is calming. I didn't like lavender until I smelled the Himalayan or Kashmir lavender. I wasn't a big fan of the French lavender, or I'm not a big fan of the Bulgarian lavender. Every once in a while, there'll be a particular one that will come out one year. And I kind of like it, but for the most part, I don't like that. And again, that's a personal preference. So I would take somebody who says, okay, here's what I'm at, and I would have them smell 3 or 4 different oils, and then when we would make their own blend, and it would be a blend that they would use anywhere for a month, say 6 weeks to 3 months, and then we would flip up the blend, say how you're doing. Sort of like when you go to the Ayurvedic doctor, and they give you a set of herbs for a while, and then they come back and say, how are you doing with this? Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Miss Oceana.
I have one more question.
Perfect.
What is the perfect set of oils for increasing sexuality?
Increasing sexuality comes from the heart and from the mind. So aphrodisiac means to calm and stimulate at the same time. Sandalwood, jasmine, neroli, and ylang ylang are generally aphrodisiac oils, but generally we want to work at the second chakra, because if we're trying to increase sexuality, are we doing it because we're trying to feel better on some level, or are we doing it because we have a low libido and we're with somebody and we want to have that physical experience and we're just having a hard time getting there? I still go back to, why are we having the hard time getting there? What's the emotional disconnect that's making us not want to go there? Maybe it's not the right timing for sex. Maybe it's not the right time. Maybe the universe is saying you're losing your energy by being in a sexual mode. Come back to creating. Because I've noticed at different times in my life, when I was involved in a relationship or not, the level of physical activity in the relationship was definitely proportionate to how much I was writing and creating books and doing things at other times. So there's a way to be physical in a relationship and still maintain a level of creativity. But again, back to, are we creating it because we're at a particular time in life and we're trying to have a child? Are we doing it because we're trying to create intimacy? You can use essential oils, as I said, do a foot rub, do a scalp rub, have the oils that you're using and have it be coconut oil, knowing that whatever you do with that oil, you can continue to take it into the bedroom. Or maybe you'll just spend the next 2 hours just touching and not even going into actual sexuality. What are we looking for from the sex? That's going to determine what oils I would draw from. And again, if it's because we have low libido, jasmine, night blooming jasmine is one of my favorite go-tos. If you don't like jasmine, try neroli. Definitely pair it with sandalwood, because sandalwood reminds you again of the intricacies of life, but it's very calming at the same time. And the only way we really feel sexual is if we can feel a sense of comfort and excitement. Otherwise, we're just jumping into a sexual mode, literally to anesthetize what's ever not working in our life.
What out of all these oils you would use if you approach sexuality as a sacred thing, as a tool for for transcendence. Like everything is fine with your libido, your partner is fine, but you both want to transcend using this beautiful tool. What?
Like almost in a tantra manner.
Yeah.
Definitely, I would use jasmine if it's supported, and definitely the night blooming. Dawn blooming jasmine is wonderful for making one feel attractive. Night blooming jasmine is more for being the queen of the night, so to speak. So I would use it with sandalwood, and then I would find maybe a orange or a tangerine or a mandarin in the backdrop. I would definitely draw from the flower of the oil because that's the sexual part. So there again, look at what the plant part is that's distilled, and that's going to touch on the particular chakra. So the flowers of all the plants are the sexual aspects of them. So apricot oil would be great. Coconut oil would be great. Jasmine would be great. And then some of your fruit cold pressed oils would be fantastic because you're going to get that sensation. Coconut oil would definitely be the carrier oil for that. And I would not use an MCT. I would use it, and then if you have to warm it because you're using it, it's getting hardened, that's okay. Because on contact, coconut oil just melts like a butter.
How do you warm it? Like, let's say it's really, really hard. Is it like?
Yeah, just put it in, take some hot water and stick the jar in there, and within 3 minutes, it'll start to soften. And then again, you can still use it hard. Like take out a little scoop in your fingers. The second you put it on your partner or on yourself, it'll instantly melt. Wonderful oil to use for sexuality, especially personal exploration of sexuality. I had a friend who was a sex teacher, and then she was without a partner, and she was using all of this on herself. And it was and she was picking different emotions and different body parts and using different oils based on that. And then that really enhanced. She started to see the reason why she didn't have a partner is so that she could actually come in contact with her own students at a different time later by working on herself and understanding her own emotions. Very healing. Thanks for the question. Yeah. Any other questions?
That's still ready.
Yeah.
You can speak about those for the prenatal and for the mothers, for the babies.
Yes.
For
So jojoba oil is a wonderful oil, again, to use with, say, a calendula oil, especially if you have sore nipples and you're breastfeeding, so that's postpartum. That's definitely important. If you're not breastfeeding, then what you're putting on your nipples wouldn't be as important. But mothers get crap nipples. They give them all sorts of terrible, crazy creams. And calendula oil and jojoba oil are absolutely the best. And baby can then suckle on that afterwards, and it doesn't hurt them at all. Prenatal. I would go, again, with oils that are uplifting to them. I would see where they're at, because one mom's divine blessing and joy is going to be another mom's, oh my gosh, it makes me nauseous every time I smell that. Prenatal go-to generally is spearmint oil, because it calms the nausea in the system, and it is an opportunity to just find the lighter side of life. Bergamot, fantastic oil. Most of your oils that are flower-based, like you're distilling them from the flower of the plant versus the tree, the stem, or the seed. Now, if you're trying to get pregnant, then I would go to seed oils, because you're trying to stimulate the ovaries. You're trying to stimulate that part of the body. So it's very intuitive where an oil that is pressed from a seed, again, and you can Google that. You can find, that's kind of, some of the fun of the oils is starting to kind of have your own conversation. It's like finding a particular mantra and then learning it, and which one am I going to do today? And you start to kind of learn a little bit about it. But you can cross-search what are essential oils that come from a seed, that are cold pressed from a seed, that are steam distilled from a seed. Definitely. And I have on the website oils to generally avoid during pregnancy, and that's not going to put a mom into preterm labor. It's oils that she's genuinely probably not going to like, and genuinely probably don't really help her. But if there's some random oil on there, she's like, I'm just loving this right now, I would never tell her no. Mom knows. Mom knows.
since you're the mother.
And since I'm the mother. Done this 3 times. Didn't have essential oils at all during any of that. I remember my first child, I remember mother-in-law trying to tell me about essential oils, but they were health food store oils. There wasn't really anything out at the time. I mean, this was, oh gosh, not that I'm that old, but this was at least 30 30 years ago. And I just remember immediately that I didn't relate to them. And I know later it was because of the quality, because my nose knew. And at that point, I was going to stick with whatever over-the-counter pharmaceutical was just as good as something.
So
So what's the difference between your oils and some other oil companies?
Well, you've got a couple different categories. Do you want to be specific on a company, or do you want to be...
Yeah, some company like doTERRA, what's the difference between your...
So doTERRA falls into a different category because it's a multi-level marketing company. Anytime you have a multi-level marketing company, that's going to be different than, say, just Joe Blow organic company. I actually had represented doTERRA for a while and did a lot of work within them behind the scenes. And then I took their oils to my Ayurvedic school with me originally. But I was required to buy also a supplies list from some of the companies that I'm buying from now, but it was through this other person. And the second that they landed, they arrived in the mail, I immediately knew there was a difference. I could tell that my multi-level marketing oils were not of the same. So I did my own personal investigations once I was in India, and I had the gas chromatography, mass spectrometry testing. So this is where I learned about the rosemary oil, this frankincense oil, eucalyptus oil. What a multi-level company has to do, because they are based on marketing. 51% of their energy is spent on marketing. 51. I don't even spend 15% on marketing with what I'm doing. You know, it's all on the harvesting of the oil. It's all on. So what a multi-level marketing company has to do is really work on the marketing aspects and then get the oil down as cheaply as possible so they can make max money off of it. Now, it sounds more attacking than what I mean. What I mean by that is they have to get this to a low cost because they're taking out different components of it. So they're going to take 3 types of frankincense, pull out different components, call it pure frankincense, put it into a bottle, and you get frankincense. They'll do the same thing with rosemary. They'll do the same thing with eucalyptus. They'll do the same thing with whatever. And what they're doing is now they can take that sliver of frankincense and put it over in this tooth powder and say there's real frankincense in this tooth powder. So they've now just made a ton of money from selling frankincense, because that was true. They did take that component, they did stick that over there. There is frankincense, but of course, that's like saying, I took the eyes of Lydia and I put them over here, so now we have Lydia. No, we don't. You just took her eyes out of her body. That's only one piece of her. And that's what they have to do. This was discovered because when I put the oils into the gas chromatography mass spectrometry test, I pulled out the printout and it didn't fit anything. It didn't fit with any of the types that was, and I didn't even know at that time because I hadn't looked at the bottle close enough. They had a frankincense blend and they had a pure frankincense. So I was like, well, this is the pure frankincense. How is this not fitting into any of the categories? So then I sent them an email, and I got an email while I was in India, got an email back because they have no phone, like they wouldn't talk to me at that point. I only had upline, downline, different management people, and they would not directly answer that question. So I contacted their 1-800, email line, and I have a copy of the letter that said, we've teamed up with the world's greatest scientists to determine what the ideal balance of frankincense should be. And that was just like, whoa, for who? My dad's Parkinson's, my skin, my friend who wants it for tooth, and I all of a sudden saw the wrongness of we've teamed up with and we've decided for everyone what you and you should have for frankincense, rather than letting you decide what you want and you decide what you want. Well, that triggered every single control issue I had all at once. And at that moment, I decided I wanted to go in a little bit deeper. Then I saw that their lemon oil was trademarked. Then I saw that their lavender oil was trademarked. And I'm like, how can you do that? Well, I found that they were, again, taking out different components and restructuring it. And you couldn't have the single oil the way that you wanted it as an Ayurvedic practitioner. So the last 2 years that I've been buying $75 worth of frankincense for my dad every single month, it wasn't even the strain he needed for his Parkinson's. So it was through that I then studied every single company that I could get my hands on and wanted to know exactly what their policies were, and then ordered in a whole bunch of samples and then brought them back, had them all tested. So let's take all multi-level marketing companies and put them in one category. If your single oil, not blend, single, lemon, orange, lavender. If there's a trademark on your single oil, it has been adulterated. It has been adulterated because they can't put a trademark on a single oil unless they shift it. You won't have that on a other standard organic group. No, if it's a blend, knock yourself out. It's your proprietary reasoning. You get to do whatever you want with that particular blend. So now let's take another subgroup. There's a wonderful company out of Oregon. I'm not going to mention them. I'm not going to mention their name because their heart is in the right place. They don't mean to do anything deceiving, but what they've kind of done is just taken ground, reconstituted it, waited their 5-year time period, now growing it as organic, but the soil in and of itself is not the soil that we would hope that it would be. The seeds that they're using, they've taken recent seeds, they've taken new seeds versus the companies that I'm working with have heirloom seeds that have been in the families for 500 years, 300 years, 100 years. Oils that I'm purchasing from the rare oils are generally bottled in under 1,500 milliliters per distillation. So very small artisan batching because they want to sell to a small, big person like me versus somebody who's going to be buying jugs and gallons. And I mean, that's a different product. They want to see more startups. So the setup of startup companies being able to create an oil that's high quality it's sort of like high quality teachers where not everybody gets the chance to go there. And so you have to kind of see what your small artisan group is going to be as it relates to what quality of oil you're going to get. There are 2 or 3 companies in the US that I would say are my strong competition. I love them. I love everything that they're doing. We get our oils from the same spot. I know what they're doing, but we all have kind of a soft, different niche, and I would never say anything negative or derogatory about what they're doing. I have sent people actually to them where I can boast savitur is that I offer it in any size. So it's not just a 15 milliliter size, it's not just a 5 milliliter size. So I give the purchaser an opportunity to purchase it at any size. So that's a benefit. Some companies will not give you the full gas chromatography mass spectrometry report. Any multi-level company will never give you. They'll send you to the website and it'll say, oh, look at this is what our component structure is. And it'll make you think that you're reading something official, but they're not going to give you all 150 components. And they'll tell you it's because it would be too confusing to you or because it's proprietary reasons. Any true oil company wants to brag. They want to show you what their full gas chromatography is. They want you to see every nuance and they want you to see it year by year. Because my lavender last year is different than my lavender this year, different than my lavender 5 years ago. And I want you as the consumer to understand, oh, we had heavy rains. Oh, no, there was a lot of sun. Oh, when COVID hit, we lost a lot of workers. And so then this is what happened to the crop. That's the difference between the companies and the transparency.
And how can I order? Like I live in Australia, how would I?
Australia is really tricky right now. Up until COVID, it was easy. I had sent packages all the time to Australia. Australia, Greece, Spain, everywhere. But right now, they're not accepting anything herbal. They are like kicking out incense. They're really weird right now. So I don't have a suggestion. It's hurting my business. I've had 3 orders since I've been here from Australia that I've had to just turn down and say, I'm super sorry. Yeah, they can get in touch on my website. I try not to do a lot of international shipping right now because customs are just being difficult. And if you're in Europe, I highly recommend Pranaram. Pranaram is a wonderful company. The original purchasers of Pranaram are Jean-Francois Badeau and Dominique Badeau, and they were the ones who invited me over. They paid for me to go to Belgium back in 2017. I sat at the table with the biggest oil importers of the world, understanding what we were doing, who was doing what, who was taking in what orders, who was dealing with what types of clients. And so I know where everybody is getting their oils. And that's an opportunity to be able to then ship and meet up with other people and go, okay, well, I'm not going to ship this to you. But, you know, Edward, who's here, I think he had said that he had seen Pranaram before in some of the stores and great, buy it. It's a good oil. We're getting it from the same source. They sell it in America. What I don't like about Pranaram is that everything that they sell you, they put into a box as well and a paper insert in it. So I just feel like it's way too much material. There's too much as it relates to that, but that's a personal thing. And it's only one size. Majority of what Savitur does is I actually sell in bulk. So I sell large containers to small family farm or small family apothecaries. So they're making bug spray, they're making face creams, they're making first aid sprays, Tasman's Organics, Anna's Apothecary, all sorts of different, great all around the US companies that are buying huge 55-gallon drums of olive oil that I have shipped over from Andalusia, Spain. But again, they're making a lot of products, but it's all operative. They're not making it for millions of people. They're making it for thousands of people, maybe tens and, Yes.
One final question.
Yes.
You injured yourself a few weeks back.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
didn't know what you healed yourself with.
Yes.
Can you speak onto what oils you added and how did that?
So I had a muffler burn, a motorcycle burn. I was on my motorcycle and somebody came in and hit me and they pinched my leg into my muffler and it never blistered. So those who got to watch the healing process, it was really fascinating because I like to do that. A while back I did that to my elbow too. I like to use myself as a little guinea pig. I put lavender oil on it immediately. Super fun story. How lavender oil got discovered was there was a gentleman who was a distiller of lavender oil and he burned his hand, like a flame went on fire and the only liquid that was there was literally a barrel of lavender oil that he had recently distilled and he stuck his whole hand into the lavender oil and he never had a blister on it. And so he kind of looked into how the hell did that happen? That's impossible. How did I not have a blister? And then started to look at the components and the linalool levels and all these other fancy words that were actually components that were preventing that. So the first thing I did is I put lavender oil. It's sort of like the aloe of the essential oil world. And neat, I put it on directly neat right away because it's an alcohol. So I wanted it directly on there. I wanted it to dry up the heat even more. I wanted it to take away. It's a cooling oil, so fantastic for that. And then I put tea tree on it because I didn't want to have an infection. And then I had my jojoba oil here. And then I got some olive oil. And so I kind of used my own little paste. And then I had some thyme, benchmark thyme, which is, it's full strains, but then it's distilled together. So you're not losing the components of anything. You're taking 2 full strain oils, blending them together, making a new, and it's called benchmark thyme. So I used that as well to prevent any issue. And then I started having issues because the water, I was told, had microbes in it. So I started to have a reaction to that. So then I needed to, I just took some extra herbs from my body that empowered my system. I did not take any antibiotics. I took some additional herbs that were going to help the healing process of my body and the reaction to it. And then bit by bit, it started to go away. Now, when I get home, back to the States, I have a scar oil blend that has mugwort and helichrysum and all sorts of fun oils in there. And I'll put that on there. And then I will look forward to seeing all of you at least anytime 6 months from now and go, hey, Somah, show me your burn. I want to see what it looks like. Because if you've ever seen a motorcycle or a muffler burn, usually it never goes away. Usually there's some sort of a marking. And so I'm determined to have this go away and just to prove my theory. My regime is getting out of the shower, and I have my Dio Essence that I put on into my fingertips, smear it literally into my dry armpits at that time. Then I next take my carrier oil of jojoba oil, frankincense and neroli, and I give myself self-abhyanga. So notice that I did the deodorant first before I do anything else so that I don't have anything on my hands. Then I'll take my face spritz, and that's the other thing I also used every single day on that burn, is it's rose hydrosol, and it has, oops, it's upside down, and it has the frankincense in there. And if you want, I'll pass this around and you can spray your face. This has helichrysum and frankincense and a tiny bit of sandalwood. Now, it was kind of almost out, and then I got some more rose hydrosol since I've been here, so it's been diluted a little bit. But feel free to spray your face. Then I do what's called a face nectar. And in my face nectar, this is red raspberry seed oil, pure red raspberry seed oil. And that has a natural SPF of 16. So I don't use SPF on my skin unless I'm in Colorado and I know I'm going to be outside for a super, super long time. Then I would only use something that's oxide or zinc oxide based. But the face nectar oil, as I call it, is red raspberry seed oil. And then I put jasmine and mandarin and frankincense in that and a tiny bit of helichrysum. And it just, I put it on my face. And then I make face creams. Yes, definitely. And if you want to, feel free. It's very thick. I'll just show for the camera for a second. It takes a while for it to come out. 1, 2, 3. Feel free to do 4 drops, 5 drops, whatever you want. Go ahead, Lydia. And then what I would do with that, and red raspberry seed oil doesn't necessarily smell super fresh like red raspberries. There's an earthiness to it. But I would just take this literally and put it on my face right after I do the face spritz. On my neck, all over. And then I take my face cream oil. And this one ended up, which was kind of funny, I made it more like a face butter. I didn't mean to. Yeah, please. Usually I make it more face creamish, but I'd been making body butters and I'd been doing them for a series of classes. And when I needed to go make face creams, I just had my wax ratio off. And so it ended up more melty body buttery. So there again, if you want to put some on your face, we're all family here, just use the back of your finger. At this point, you've got oils on. Just kind of scoop some through with your finger, but a little will go a long way. And then rub your hands together and rub it all over. And then, there you go. I brush my teeth with my tooth powder that I make. And in my tooth powder, but I don't share this with anybody, and I don't sell it on my website. But I can, on my website, if you Google or if you look up the steam distilled clove, the recipe is there. And what it is, I'll show it to the camera a little bit. It's bentonite clay, charcoal. Never stir charcoal with stainless steel because it deactivates the charcoal. So you have to have activated charcoal, the bentonite clay, a little bit of salt, and then I put in peppermint, cinnamon, clove, and again, a different type of frankincense. It's frankincense freriana. This is my toothpaste. I haven't used a fluoride toothpaste in 8 years. And you dip your toothbrush in it. So you can pass it around, kind of look at it, smell it. And if you come to me with some small container, I'll give you a tiny bit of the powder. And again, you put it on your teeth and your teeth are all black, you know, because it's the charcoal. And y'all met Mike. When I first met Mike, his teeth were kind of yellowy. You could really see his pitta, and it toned him way down immediately. So then he got his kids to use it. My kids think it's too weird, but I've just kind of ruined my kids in the last 10 years. Like everything I'm doing right now is really weird. So they'll come around eventually.
I was going to ask if, how do you encourage men to use oils?
Some just love it. Some just do. Like I made a deodorant for Mike, and he'll get out of the shower and he'll stand there and he'll put his arms up in the air and he straddles his legs. He's like, go ahead. You know, some guys just love it, but he won't wear it to the office because he feels like it's too strong. It's too much. Now there are other guys that are like, oh my God, I totally want to wear it to the office because it makes me feel really empowered. We have the fun story with Tomas. I don't know if you heard this one, but Tomas had been teaching. And so I like to gift people, you know, oils as my way of saying thank you, whatever. So I gifted him the Dio Essence that had the vetiver in there. And I said, you know, explain, put it on there, especially with men or women. If you have hair, you have to really get into the skin underneath and around the hair. And it'll work. Well, he said, I have to tell you this story. The other morning, I'm laying in bed and I started to wake up. And I went, what smells so good? And then I went, it's me. And his whole face lit up. So yeah, men like that. I mean, they do. And I'm about to make a new men's Dio Essence. I shouldn't call it men, earthy and floral. And I had one that was called Bajrang, but I'm having an issue right now sourcing really high quality Palo Santo. And that was the grounding basis to it. My Palo Santo guy, something happened with COVID. I don't know if he lost his farm, if he died. I don't know what happened, but he's been very non-responsive. And all of the other sources, when I start to follow the chain, I am not liking the source of Palo Santo. So, well, Palo Santo is one of those like a sandalwood where it has to die naturally. The tree has to die naturally. Otherwise, if you kill it, it loses the oil. So they've been trying to figure out how to unsustainably harvest it, and I just won't participate. But this amber oil and with vetiver is like just to live for. It's very sexy, very strong.
And I have to tell you, I come to Thomas from time to time, I take this deodorant for myself.
Yeah, and yes, women use it too. I have a lot of women that buy the Earth Deo Essence. They don't want the flowery one. Or sometimes you can mix the two together. So that being done, let's see, I do my hair. Oh, hair oil. So when my hair, because just before we started this video, I just jumped out of the shower. Now it's a little bit too dry, but not necessarily. But I would take the hair oil I make, and this has jojoba, argan oil, rosemary verbena, not senile, patchouli, and a tiny bit of dawn blooming jasmine. I don't know if there's any in here.
Sounds really amazing. Is it okay to put it on
Yep.
the freshly washed hair?
Yeah. So there's one drop in there. I don't know. Anybody, you guys can you can smell it, fight over it. I don't know that you're going to get anything left. But here's one drop I have. So for example, I could add more jojoba to that. And if my hair is still wet, I would just rub it first into the ends, take my fingertips, scalp rub it. That's wonderful. And then rub it into the rest of your hair. And it calms the frizzies. It helps when you're in a hot environment. And I would use way more. I mean, we're getting down to the end of my trip, which is why it's down to so much. But otherwise, normally, I could do a whole lot and really give myself a nice, strong scalp treatment. Then take the ends, wrap it all up, and then just put my head up into a bandana of some sort. Do that in the evening. Wrap it then in a towel. Sleep with it. And the next day to wash it out. Do you know how to wash oil out of your hair? Don't go into the shower with it. Take shampoo in your oily hair, like just pour the shampoo into your hands, start to smother the shampoo into your hair, really work it in, then go into the water. Because you'll break down the oil. And then you wash it. And then if you want to do a second wash and it'll lather up right away. And then go ahead and put in your conditioner. And then you could still come back to the oil very lightly and just touch up your hair to hold on to it. And you will love it. Yep.
What about the oil what you put, like Ayurvedic oils, which are very smelly, and you're using them for Abhyanga, self-Abhyanga? How to take them off for the body?
I don't. Why would you take oil off your body? I don't know. I don't have that answer. Yeah, you can just take a towel. I mean, you can wipe off. After Abhyanga, they'll hand you a towel and you can wipe it off. But I don't. I mean, the whole purpose of that is to kind of leave it on, towel it off. I guess you could, yeah. I wouldn't take it off the skin. I wouldn't soap it.
I mean, of course, I do the same
Yep,
thing what you
yep,
do. I just,
yeah.
my question was already when you, because I also sleep with the oil.
Yes.
In the morning, like.
In the morning, just normal, because you really don't want to, and great question. That's the only time that I would really be cautious about not overusing soap. Just use the soap in the main body parts or whatever, but I wouldn't soap up my arms, I wouldn't soap up my belly, I wouldn't soap up my legs the day after an Abhyanga. I would still let my body kind of absorb it in, for sure. Thank you, that was a great question. And that's my little daily regime. And that's my answer to how I balance my chakras, because all of that's happening at all times. The Relax and Balance oil is the oil for sleep, for grounding. It has jatamansi, it has Roman chamomile. Jatamansi, oh my gosh, I should tell you a fun story about that. So I'm gonna have you smell this. This used to be called sleep aid, but you can't do anything with sleep or you have to like say other words now. Very, very like calming, anti-anxiety, super earthy. Now, jatamansi, aka spikenard, you'll see spikenard written in the Bible. It's the oil that Mary put on Jesus prior to crucifixion because it was to help anesthetize and remind him of what his soul's journey was. When I was in our Ayurvedic school, up high in the Himalayas, if you've all read Autobiography of a Yogi, where Lahi Mahishar first sees Yukteswar, Sri Yukteswar, in that cave. I've been into that particular cave, and when you're in that space, he would use jatamansi or spikenard oil to remember who he was. So while we were up there, we were going walking, and we were going to be gone for a long time, and my teacher came around, and he took the jatamansi oil, and he put it on our crown chakra. And yeah, you could totally put it on your crown chakra, put it on your throat chakra, put it on the Kali point, put it on your third eye.
What is the Kali point?
The Kali point is the hair point. Oh, sorry, it's a marma point. Time. Yeah. You have the Adipati is the top, and then you go forward. One anguli. Do you know what an anguli is in Ayurveda? So it's one of your thumb knuckles. And one anguli forward from your Adipati, which is the bone that sticks up from your head, is your Brahmaranda. And then you go back to the flat point, the top of the flat point of your head. That's the Shivaranda. And then you come forward to the Kali point. That's the point of time. And you can come down to your third eye. And these are all different marma points. There again, with a migraine, you could use a great migraine oil on that, or use the Relax and Balance oil on that.
To the reptilian brain?
And that totally works with the reptilian brain. So Jatamansi was used so that when we walked through the forest, we would avoid tigers, we would avoid leopards, it would keep you in conscious form. And one day we were walking, and all of a sudden I was kind of ahead of the group, and we were kind of cruising through, and I thought I saw something jump across. And I was like, no way, that wasn't a leopard, was it? And I'd seen all these monkeys, and all of a sudden I heard, it was a monkey, and then I saw the leopard jump right across, and he had lunch. And it was amazing, at just the intuition of the oil and how it had me walk back and step and turn around, and phenomenal. It's a very strong anesthetizing oil. After I'd had a conference with a student client last night, and she was really up very much. There was a lot going on in her head. And I started to pick up on that energy. So I sprinkled that all around my room. I took a candle that was unscented, sprinkled it around the candle, and then I lit the candle so that when the candle burned, it just drew in the aroma of the Relax and Balance. And then, of course, put it on my collarbones, and then every once in a while just kind of kept smelling it. Put it on the pillow. We are, a while. I think we're there.
Thank you.
Thank you so very, very much. So good to see you. And if you have any questions, let me know. www.savitourbotanicals.com. Namaste.